This is a mouse that's over 7 years old and over 10,000 people still buy it every single month on Amazon. This makes it one of the most purchased mice of all time. And did you know that it has a die-hard group of people who absolutely love it and have even come up with some crazy mods? Coming in at a ridiculously low price of $30, it begs the question, is it even worth buying the latest tech that's been getting more and more expensive every year? Or can you get something for a fraction of the price that's potentially just as good? Or in some ways, even better? With new tech changing rapidly and new tech getting outdated in the blink of an eye, it made me want to look back on the tech that stood the test of time and see if the solutions to our problems are somewhere in our past. We'll be exploring that today by looking at none other than the Logitech G305 Lightspeed. So I've been researching it, testing it, and even upgrading it to answer those very questions. So the Logitech G305 Lightspeed came out in 2018, yes, whopping 7 years ago, and was packed with some of the biggest innovations at the time, but with a price tag for the everyday person. $60. It had Logitech Lightspeed, a huge advancement in wireless gaming that was faster than even some wired mice at the time, along with Logitech's Hero sensor, which boosted performance at 10x the power efficiency of older mice, making wireless even possible. With a tech product, normally you will have a lot of people buy it for a couple years and then slowly but surely it'll fade into irrelevance. But not this mouse. As of today, people are still picking this thing up in droves as the price has continually decreased. It's currently sitting at $31 and sometimes it drops as low as $25 during days like Prime Day. And when you take a closer look at competitor products, sure, there are some great options to get like the HyperX Pulsefire Haste or the Razer Viper Mini until you realize they're missing one crucial feature. They aren't wireless. This puts the Logitech G305 in a league of its own, a category of one. But what's it like to actually use a 7-year-old mouse? Does it feel like a relic from the past or like a modern gaming mouse? Well, when I first took it out of the box, there were two major surprises. You see, with modern wireless gaming mice, you can charge the mouse with a USB-C cable, but not this one. To my shock, I saw a little Duracell AA battery sticking out of the package and I thought, there's no way. You need to use disposable batteries in this thing? It almost felt like I was a kid unboxing a toy on Christmas where for some reason everything needs batteries and you're SOL if you don't have them. The second surprise was equally as shocking. With a wireless mouse, usually you use it wirelessly, and then when the battery runs low, you plug it in and charge it and just keep on gaming. This mouse is wireless only. There's no ports. What the actual? And people buy this thing? Well, I was clearly very confused by this. My shock slowly turned into something else. New tech is often overloaded with features and functionality, which adds to the convenience of it. But that also leads to a bloated price tag and a more complicated user experience. But with older tech like this, I've found it to be quite the opposite. Sure, you're missing out on features like wired charging, but I came to appreciate how simple and intuitive it is to use. You plug in your wireless dongle to your PC, you pop the battery in the mouse, you turn it on, and it just works. This is one of the simplest yet effective mice or any peripheral that I've used in a while, which is something I really miss about older technology, and I started loving about this mouse. Now, I'm sure you have some concerns about a replaceable AA battery, like how long does it last? And do you end up paying more because you constantly need to replace the battery? Well, a single one of these AA batteries will last about 250 hours, but if you want to stretch the battery life, you can turn it on endurance mode in the Logitech software and basically 3x that lifespan. Although in endurance mode, you'll experience a decrease in performance, your polling rate will drop quite a bit, which is a pretty big deal in competitive games, so it may not be worth it for you if you're a gamer. So for my research, a single AA battery in normal mode can last around 2 to 3 months, so in any given year, you'll be going through about 4 of these AA batteries. But if you really want to, you could opt for a rechargeable AA battery instead. It has an on-off switch at the bottom, which made me think the battery was gonna die if I didn't turn it off after every use. But after further research, the mouse goes into sleep mode after about 5 minutes of not using it. So it doesn't really drain that much battery to leave it on all the time. And I didn't notice any delays when picking up the mouse after after it went to sleep. I sort of love the set it and forget it aspect of this mouse. It just works when you need it to work with less upkeep than a normal wireless mouse. However, the battery in this thing does add a lot of weight. But we'll discuss a few mods you can do later to make this as light as a modern gaming mouse. Wireless gaming mouse. So how does a G305 Lightspeed compare to a modern gaming mouse? Is it clunky, heavy, and basically unusable? So this thing definitely has a few quirks. The first thing I noticed was how different each mouse click sounds. It's loud. It really emanates around the room, and it almost produces an echo on each click. When Jake was testing it out, the clicks were quite distracting, so I'm not really a fan of it. Here's what they sound like side by side with my Pulsar X2. Ooh. I wish this was the only issue, but there might be a few more. For one, this thing has some junk in the trunk. The weight comes from the battery that makes this mouse super back heavy. When you slide it around with your finger, you can see how it tilts compared to another mouse. It also has pretty wide hips and it shapes into a narrow end. The only upside about the shape is that it's ambidextrous, so you can use it even in your left hand. But shape is mostly preferential. I find it to be quite comfortable to use. I have smaller hands, so I end up holding it with a palm grip, but Jake has larger hands and he would fingertip for casual stuff like browsing the internet and a claw grip for FPS games. So for the average hand size, you'll probably end up using a fingertip grip. And finally, this thing does produce more friction than my other gaming mice. The skates just don't feel as smooth. But luckily, all of these are fixable with a few mods we're going to do later if you're willing to put in a little extra money and some effort. Oh, and it doesn't have RGB if you care about that at all. I don't. I sort of like that it doesn't have RGB. The overall build quality of this thing feels super nice and sturdy. It's got a thick plastic. It doesn't creak at all if you try to bend it or press on it. And the DPI button at the top feels responsive. The scroll wheel is snappy and consistent. And there's two buttons on the side, which I use to go back or previous page or forward when using the internet. And in games, one of them is meant to melee someone. But if you're a big mouse button person, this probably isn't for you. It doesn't have that many buttons. When it comes to the actual speed of this thing, can it compete with newer mice? As I mentioned before, it does have the Hero sensor in it, one of the best mice sensors of all time. However, it is an older version of the sensor and you're limited to 12K DPI, which you can set using the Logitech G Hub software. Over the years, Logitech has done a few upgrades to the sensor, with the most recent version going up to 25K DPI. While there's some advantages to playing at a higher DPI, there are diminishing returns, and I doubt 99% of players even want to turn their DPI up to 25,000. So this 7-year-old sensor is nearly as good as the newer ones, but what about the sheer speed of this mouse? The polling rate will determine how fast this thing is compared to newer mice. As I mentioned before, it has a polling rate of 1000 Hz, where newer mice are in the 8K range. While that may sound like a big difference, it's really not. This is another small incremental upgrade that most players probably don't care about or will even notice. This makes a lot of gamers just shrug off whatever new product is launched and consider it a marketing gimmick. As for $30, this thing is still freaking fast for gaming. It might not be for you if you're super into competitive games or you're a pro gamer. Now, what might turn you away from this mouse is the weight. This thing is a chunk. It comes in at 96 grams and feels significantly heavier than a newer mouse, which is closer to 60 grams. And there are a few ways to get around that with a few scrappy mods, if you know a couple tricks. And they're surprisingly easy, although I have a difficult one you can try too if you really want to. You can simply swap out the AA battery with a AAA battery by using an adapter like this one. This will shave about 8 grams off the weight, putting it at a more comfortable 88 grams. Or you can use a little ball of aluminum instead of the adapter if you want to lower it down to 84 grams instead. A little jank, but oddly effective. And if you want to go super jank and take off 8 more grams, you can use it without the battery cover on the back. Now it's at 76 grams. Not bad, huh? You might be worried this makes a mouse super uncomfortable to use, but in reality, if you use a claw grip, you really never end up touching the exposed area in the first place. Although I admit, it's really ugly to look at. If you don't like how frictiony this feels, you can also swap to newer skates. And these skates were made by Hotline Games and made it glide smoother. Then I discovered this Reddit thread by user Zedramis, and what he did shocked me. He curated a list of various 3D printed mouse bodies that you can use to lower the weight even more. Now, out of curiosity, I took a few of those 3D models and sent them to a local 3D print house in my area called 3D Prints Everything. Or if you have a 3D printer at home, you could probably do it yourself too. So I put in an order, and the day after, I got the parts back. I ended up going with two different versions. One is an Xtrfy M4 body, and another is a G Pro Superlight body, and they look sort of awesome, right? So I took apart my G305 Lightspeed, not this one, another one, and I put it inside the Xtrfy M4 body. This process, I admit, is a little scuffed and sketchy, but I was left with a mouse that weighed less than 60 grams. Now, this was an insane amount of work and effort to do this, so I can't recommend it, and I still have several issues with the print, such as the side buttons not fitting, or the back cover not latching down, but I did it. And so if you're really into tinkering, or you have a 3D printer, give it a shot. And if you're in the Dallas area, check out the print shop I went to called 3D Prints Everything. They were super helpful and fast. So after all of this testing and modding, is this mouse still worth getting? And more importantly, is it better than a modern day gaming mouse? While I'll be the first to admit this mouse is far from perfect, it's been an absolute pleasure to use with a bunch of little surprises along the way. And in some ways, I do think older tech is actually better, but it does lag behind a little bit in speed and performance for those of you that really prioritize having a lighter mouse and the latest and greatest hardware. But if you only want to spend $30 on a mouse that's also wireless, it's an instant buy. It offers insane value for the price, so it makes sense why so many people buy this every month. And thanks for watching, and check out my video here on this awesome $64 keyboard. Bye!